How
Hey,
about
how are
been
you?
some
Long
time?
time.
Long
I
time,
know.
totally. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you. It's been a while, so I apologize for not able to keep the track of things. So I know
No,
Praveen just
no.
texted me or called me.
Praveen never lectures. He's too soft. He's such a gentleman. But his the the periodicity or the frequency of his reminders will just increase dramatically. So you're on the wrong track.
Right. I had a pretty I was delayed in my previous one, so I apologize.
No, no problem. Then let's get started. Um, uh, Dr. Chinabab, and uh, uh, take a minute. Dr. Kiran, I know you, but I wanted to introduce my colleague and good friend, Dr. Narang also. PK, do you mind just repeating what you did the last time? And Kiran, if you could also uh, give a brief introduction, then we, at least as a team, we know who does what and what are the expertise before we dive into some of the specifics.
Yeah, absolutely. I can go
So,
first. Oh, sorry. Go
okay.
ahead.
Okay, no, go ahead, Karen. Go ahead first.
Well, it's easy. I'm Kiran, Kiran Avancha. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for Honor Health, which is the second largest health system out of Arizona. I've been in the clinical research world. I've worked as the Chief Operating Officer for the Research and Innovation Institute. I've ran over 600 trials in my career so far, including phase one, phase two, first in humans, clinical research throughout. I've been in the clinical research arena for the last 2.5 decades. And my research has been primarily in oncology. I've been a bench researcher. I've been at multiple academic institutions, University of Miami Health System, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and as such. Chinna and I, we co-founded a clinical research company based out of Hyderabad. Chinna is still part of that. I exited in 2017. I now have my own therapeutic company in Ultra. It's called Prism Therapeutics, which is in the space of rare pediatric disorders. So that's who I am, and I'm really interested to learn more. On the Grace Cancer Foundation side, I'm the founding member of Global Grace Health in US. Okay.
Well, that's great. Maybe I'll keep it short. I can't top that, so I'll just stop here. So my background is my PhD is in clinical pharmacology. So I spent being in this drug development and product registration business for more than 35 years now. And I spent first half of my career at NIH and in pharmaceutical world with companies like Pharmacia and Pharmacia and Upjohn. And then I worked with in regulatory affairs as a global head in leadership roles at Novartis and GE for their medical diagnostics business, and at Novartis for oncology business. And Rama and I met in 2003 when I was at Novartis. And I've been working with Rama now for 3.5 years or so. And slowly building this product with new technology, which I'm sure he'll be able to elaborate a lot more. But I'm happy to be here and looking forward to seeing how we can collaborate, because this is software has great potential, certainly in thinking about decentralized space and rare diseases and natural history and gathering that kind of information, which is key to development of new products.
Right. So I
Thanks,
haven't had
PK.
a chance to get the software yet, so probably this would be an opportunity for me as well.
Yeah. In fact, since we spoke last, Kiran, we've made pretty huge strides. So the first thing is that we are now Part 11 compliant. Secondly, we've built in a very modular way. So we've got a suite of modules. We've got the EDC that I talked to you about, but now we've got an e-consent and eTMF, all bundled as part of a CTMS. And we've got a finance module also. And hot off the press is the technical POC that we just did for track and trace of clinical trial materials and biosamples, given the rush to decentralized trials. So we built a track and trace module for that too. It's for supply chain management. So our solution is very comprehensive. And beyond the two cases that we, case studies or customers uses that we did, one was with Grace Cancer Foundation at Nizamabad when we ran the clinic under Dr. Chinababu's leadership. We kind of ran with 65 patients over 6 hours and showed how we could show in real time what was happening. So we developed the whole system for the camp actually in about 3 weeks time, 2.5 weeks to be precise, because the last week was, now I spoke to Dr. Chinababu on January 8th, and January 27th, I still remember in Nizamabad, it was a camp. Excuse me. And we had the system ready and we trained people and it went off very well. And since that, in the tech stack that we built, Boehringer Ingelheim also built a very similar one with the help of IBM, spent, I guess, millions of dollars in about 3 years. And they were doing an e-consent proof of concept. And they showed a 99% improvement, both in terms of efficiency as well as decrease in cost. We said we could at least match that to about 50%, because that's what happened in our observational diabetes study that we did in Puducherry. It was just around the time the GCF camp took place in Nizamabad. So that's a quick high-level overview. And we're still, of course, in the usual perennial hunt as startups for customers and investors. But that's a separate discussion. Yeah. So let me now switch gears. Dr. Chinababu, if you'll permit me, given that you put together the proposal, or at least, and you're driving, is that okay if I were to kind of react and respond to it? And then PK, feel free to, give your thoughts also, and Praveen, then I'll bring that together where I really need some help from you, in terms of bringing this together. So Dr. Chinababu, first some context. The first thing is that I liked what you had written out in that proposal, and both Dr. Narang and I, we kind of tweaked it. And so we've got the tweaks already also. But after I did it, I was just still felt, uneasy about it. And I say uneasy because one is, Praveen, as I said, Christine is still the blockchain leader in UNICEF. So I know she's going to be, there's a lady called Christine Lomazo in Kiran that used to head up the blockchain course at MIT, which I did, in about 2018, early 2018. And she gave the project very high grades and me very high grades because of what we put together. It was coincidentally, she joined UNICEF 3 years after that. So I was pitching for another project, but they ruled us out because we were a US company. As we had some pretty cool ideas that we were talking to them. So knowing how she thinks, at least because I had a number of conversations, I felt that we may be challenged whether our project is really a true blockchain, quote unquote, blockchain project, or basically more attuned to an NIH grant or a WHO grant, because we're basically doing a great project in cervical cancer and HPV vaccine, but it's more like a clinical study. Now, selfishly, it dovetails beautifully into what we have built, to be very frank, because we have built a clinical trial management and financial system, so there's no doubt about that. Having said that, the challenge really would be to make it a winner to all the other proposals that are there. So I was thinking that we should use this time to not just look at this proposal, but look at really how they have awarded awards, and then Praveen, later, what I would like to request you is, you got the day ahead of you, and tomorrow, maybe you should just take a look at all the grants that they have won and see in the blockchain space, how many of them are kind of in our domain, like what we have built. That will give us an idea of what are winners, because they get about 400 normally approximately requests from over the 70 program countries. Now, I'm not saying that is what we do. That is my first reflective thought after seeing this structure, that I want to open it for discussion. Now, secondly is, if we decide that we don't want to do anything, separate, we want to stay with this. This is very cool. Then I've got some thoughts of how we can buff it up to make it a little more stronger from the perspective of winning the grant. Because our objective is to win and execute, and then get to a second stage with it. Not just this stage. And the third piece that I felt was also critical was that, and this is where I think, Dr. Chinnababu, I want to leverage your experience, is to understand what are the true pain points that you've seen. Now, from our background, we do see some pain points which we've put into the proposal. And I'll show you that proposal also separately. And I'll send that to you, Praveen, so you can display it. We didn't do it in the Google Docs because we are still bouncing ideas, Dr. Narang and I, but I thought we could have that discussion also. So I wanted to open it up to you all for your criticism, challenges, suggestions, whether this is the way to go, which is namely one, looking at other grants, maybe looking at blockchain and what pain points it solves in a different way compared to a clinical study. And then if the answer is, well, there's not something good there, we go back to the clinical study, and then we try to beef it up for actual pain points that you've seen, and potentially get away from a localized study, but a globalized study. What do you think?
Sure, Anish. Thank you for your comments on that. I think for benefit of Dr. Kiran Avancha, Kiran Garu, good evening. I hope you could see a small brief document sent, and are you able to access that? This is based on the cervical cancer screening model and the vaccination drive. We thought that could be the easiest one to implement. That sense we chose. This need not be the final. And more importantly, I've just kind of put together some document which is more of a clinical study, as rightly pointed out by Rama. So more of a how can we do a public outreach initiative? That's what is the whole thing. But now, as rightly discussed here, I think we need to look at the problem statement much more than the solution. If you ask me what are the pain points in this endeavor, I think the number one is in terms of the data itself, because we had an amazing conference at IIIT Hyderabad a couple of days ago, and we were discussing about the quality of the data that is available. So in the longitudinal data, especially for if a girl child and women, I think that is something that is in a robust way of collecting the data, or you can say an electronic health record itself. In that sense, is the basic thing which is still lacking in the rural setup for sure. I mean, that is an immediate, I would say, a requirement as such. And apart from that, I think what I would say, I mean, see, I'm not trying to fit in blockchain to this problem. The question, we'll first look at the problem and then independently see whether it makes any sense or not to apply this and provide a solution to this problem. So the second thing is now the vaccination. Most of the times people don't take vaccine. They do take one dose, the second dose is missed as well. So in that sense, can there be a robust system to do very, very proper follow-up of these children, and in a systematic way can we administer vaccine to them and then do a follow-up, say after 3 years, 5 years, is one thing that we can look at as a the on-field at the grassroots level, what is the need. So that is the number two. Number two, in terms of the tracing them, following up them, and to kind of give them a reminders and all that. That is one thing. And can we do some kind of a hygiene intervention, or some kind of a the lifestyle intervention, because that is also related to be one of the cause for cervical cancer in terms of the hygiene. And thanks to the improvements in the hygiene, the incidence is coming down actually. So given that their sexual activity may be their practices of menstrual cycle, whatnot. I mean, all that can be kind of some reminders or some kind of a drive can be taken up so that the people who sign up can be given this periodic information in a very secured way and with a confidential, so that they also don't feel very shy about this, knowing these things. So that I think these are the top 3 things that come to my mind at this point of time. I'm open even for doing some altogether different project as well, because ultimately our purpose of this discussion is applying for this grant and winning a grant. Because there are so many problems. We're not solving the entire problem. So how do we get there? My point is, I didn't really stitch anything with respect to technology. I just put down what can be done as a thing. That's it. So I think based on our discussions, we can see in with all areas with our pain points can we really leverage the technology. So this is my 2 cents only. Thank you.
Wonderful, Dr. Karu. So what we can do is that maybe Praveen, I just sent you. So we've got and this, we are being very transparent and open how we were talking through this. But if you can just go down to background to go to pain points, I think I've written a section on pain points because I wanted to read that out to. Can you go down below? You can go below. Yeah. Drat. I thought this was. Can you just go further? For some reason, it has. I wrote a whole paragraph on the pain points. Keep going, Praveen.
Do you still have it in your system, Brahma?
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll show it from my system. Praveen, can you hand over this thing to me? I'll try to show it.
Meanwhile, I request Kiran Garu, so please think over what could be your comments or thoughts in this, so that.
So here is, I'll show you. Can I share my screen now, Praveen?
Sure, sir. You can share, sir.
Okay. So just continuing on the point or pain points, I said this is just at a very high level. And in a way, I like the point you made of data integrity, because that's the first thing that I said. Second thing I said is minimizing manual processes for data capture, given the sensitivity of the respondents to these questions. It goes back to your point, Dr. Chinnababu, about, when you're taking questions about sexual activity or menstrual cycles, it's not going to be easy to get that data. And you need to do it in the privacy of a person's home, or people respond to it with their own system, like a patient recording of outcomes kind of solution. And then the third thing is speeding up real-time availability. And when I say real-time availability, it is literally if your patient is in Addis Ababa and you're sitting in Hyderabad, you need to be able to see what they have written in their questionnaire or response to whatever study parameters that you have set up. The other part also is that in this case, it may or may not be applicable. You're the judge of it. But in case there are certain events that happen, just one second. If there are any incidences of adverse events that are taking place, not associated with any administration of any drug or any process, but if that is one parameter that is being tracked, we need to find it in real time. Now, what is happening also is that there are ransomware events and attacks. Now, it might be very stretch to imagine that a UNICEF study would be impacted by it, but we cannot rule out all these things. And then what we also have is that when you're building up your vaccines, delivery systems, now I know that there's a very good Hyderabad company that does it, but we can integrate everything all into one platform. And it is basically an iPad and everything runs associated with it. So coming back to, if these are the pain points that you have observed in these trials or may resonate for this study, then our system and the solution makes sense. But I wanted to be careful that we were not putting the cart before the horse. I was saying, let's do the study and let's use our system and then boom, go forward. And that's why, Dr. Chinnababu, I asked you, what are the real pain points? And in a way, you've captured some of the points I've made independently. That's why I didn't want to show this as a starter. So let me pause there for a minute.
I was going to say, I think that one of the main things that Dr. Chinnababu said today and the other day when he spoke for the first time was that he was concerned with both the quality and integrity of data and immutability of some clinical data being captured in the privacy of people's home would be relevant to this project. So I think those are, I guess, reasonably speaking, those are critical, key, painful points to assure a receiver that the data quality is, of the highest caliber, whatever that caliber is in some definition. And so I think if we go along with that logic, we should be able to construct something around with some solution like this technology.
I think building on your point, PK, I think I agree with it. And you're right. In a way, that's the data integrity catch-all that I showed in my paragraph there. What we might want to do, though, is then, if we focus on that pain point and we know we have a solution, is to construct the study to be able to test or at least evaluate some parameters in that area, so that we can show then the superiority of a blockchain technology goes in leaps and bounds. The immutability for the future is also very important. So let's say if you've got an adolescent who is 16-year-old girl who has taken an HPV vaccine in Addis Ababa or in Nizamabad, and then when she's 46, you've got the data continuously during this period, depending on whatever the cycle of checkups or recording that is taking place. But my question is actually fundamental. If the pain points resonate, Dr. Chinnababu, then can we construct a study that is actually building of these pain points rather than just a classic clinical study on in this area? That's the part I was not too sure about, and I wanted, Kiran Garg, and your viewpoints also on that.
Sure. I think I will let Kiran speak first, and then probably I'll make some comments.
Yes. So Dr. Chinna and I had a brief conversation very early on in this process. The first criterion that I believe the whole UNICEF grant had is in terms of you need to have this uniqueness on the technology, especially on the blockchain side, but at the same time you are trying to solve something that is relevant from an impact and outcome standpoint of view. Healthcare is such a complex thing, and probably any one of us who are working in healthcare can give you thousands of problems out there in terms of why each of these problems is a complex, complicated. Take it all the way from the cure side, whether it is the clinical trials, running of the clinical trials, operations, to data collection, to whatnot. So I'm looking at this from a different angle. First, we need to understand what's the technology. I personally have had very difficult time in comprehensively understanding blockchain in healthcare. I could understand blockchain in a financial setting. Yes, there is a decentralized aspect that is totally needed, but in a healthcare setting, why would I want to decentralize the data? Because you want to control the data to the best extent possible, from a curation of the database to getting the data, because that's what FDA would automatically ask. I mean, Dr. Naran, probably working with FDA, would be very clear in terms of how the data integrity and everything needs to be part of. So I personally don't have that level of understanding on the blockchain, at least to make a sensible comment on it. So first, if there is an opportunity for maybe I don't want to take the conversation in a different direction, but at least from a layman perspective, if I could request and ask, what is the technology that you have, that you're doing? If you talk about e-consent, right? E-consent is has been floating around for the last 2 decades. I mean, WCG has e-consent. There is the latest one, Signal Path. sold to Verily. They have their e-consent and everything. You got Meetable. You got a bunch of companies that are in the e-consent space. So e-consent and CTMS is again a very interestingly crowded space. As such, I have implemented almost 3 or 4 CTMSs in the last 8 years. That every CTMS is different in terms of what you're trying to do. How is your technology that you're doing from a blockchain perspective? What does blockchain has to offer in this space? Again, I'm purely asking from a layman perspective, and maybe that's how we can look into. The other one, like you said, Ramaragaru, that what is your pain point, right? So I think we need to identify the right pain point that can then match the technology. You don't want to, put the square peg in a round hole kind of a thing, because that's not going to happen, right? I mean, I could see n number of physicians every day asking for, I want a solution, I want a clear technology solution. There could be something, wave your magic wand and there should be a technology here. But as you might very well know, that's not how it happens in real world, because
Sure.
How the data flows, where the data flows. To your point, yes, this looks like a clinical trial. This looks like somebody who's trying to do a clinical study. Now, are we going to do the clinical study to show that the blockchain technology that you're providing is something more superior to whatever that's been done out there? I don't know. So I'm clearly very new entrant into the game, so I'm trying to figure this out myself.
Understood. PK, do you want to add a couple of comments? And to be honest, I'll also then add some comments, Kiran. And then what I think maybe also valuable is I have a separate one-on-one discussion with you, because there's a little more to it than just this comment, in the interest of time. That's what I would propose. Sorry, PK, over to you.
So, I mean, what you just said is very fair in some ways, because some of these tools are generally speaking available, but they're generally available in piecemeal fashion sometime in certain spaces. So the idea is, can you work with a platform that brings a greater level of efficiency to the same process we call execution of a clinical trial in operational space? So how does it work between patient, an investigator site, and the sponsor of that study? How whatever processes that work for that triangle, how can you make them efficient? So I think it's a solution which says decentralized component is basically that it's not just a single place where the data resides, but it resides in multiple places. And it has certain capabilities to produce data in real time. And at the end of the day, when the study is complete, how you define the completion of the study, you theoretically have some file available that can be made available for any appropriate analysis that you may need to do for preparing a clinical study report, or to submit to the FDA, or whoever in your biostat group will convert these into the ADAM files and other files that are submitted with any submissions where people will submit it to regulators. But it's not that there is no other way to do clinical trials. I think the thing that Rama was mentioning before with the Boehringer Ingelheim and IBM study, where they leverage e-consent piece. So this BlockCube offers similar e-pieces of 7 or 8 different things. So it allows you to gain greater efficiencies in all those spaces, basically. And whether it is remote monitoring, whether it is remote collection of data, whether it is taking the trials to patients' home, enhancing access, enhancing enrollment. I mean, there are all these little things that happen which take you away from a central location of a site. You can manage that through this iPad that's available, which can run the system. So I would probably stop, but I know that FDA, I had mentioned this to other people, that FDA recently completed a project with Merck was involved with it, KPMG was their advisor, and Walmart. And their product was how to make an efficient withdrawal of a product from the marketplace. So if there was a recall of some kind, and this product was in thousands of stores around the country in Walmart shelves someplace, how do you withdraw that project? How do you recall it quickly? So they concluded in this report, this project that ran 2 years ago, in their report, they concluded that using this distributed ledger technology or blockchain technology, they were able to reduce the time from 3 to 4 days that it used to take them, generally speaking, talking with Walmart people, talking with KPM, Merck people, talking with whoever was involved with this process. And they were able to accomplish this in less than few hours. They knew exactly where each product was, because with all these barcodes and QR codes, they can track it at the package level. So there are built-in advantages because of the technology itself. And then it leads to certainly things like how sure you are that nobody has fooled around with the data, how clean everything is, the integrity of the data. So then you get into those kinds of questions. But ultimately, it's about the quality of data that you get. And you have processes that are a lot more efficient rather than, clinical running on one side, finance running on something else, and, how they work together. Here, it's all integrated because of technology and smart contracts that are afforded within it, so to speak.
So let me just build on PK's point, Kiran Garu, and keep it in a very simple form. And like I said, it'd be great to have a more detailed conversation to have these discussions. The first thing is that it's only with people that I know very closely that I talk about blockchain per se, because to somebody who is doing a clinical trial or using the system, they shouldn't care what the engine is. They should care what the benefits are, what do you deliver. So that's one part, but this is a different audience and a different discussion. The first point is that when you have a centralized database in the way most systems run today, they run in a batch process because you have data collected at a place, then you have the source data verification that takes place. A monitor heads out to the site and goes through all those processes. Those systems have not broadly changed, really. What happens with the blockchain-based system is the real-time process, because you've got nodes where you have copies of the data being stored. So the minute somebody has entered data, and I'll come to how is the data entered in a minute, everybody gets to know of it. So if an adverse event has happened in a place, I know when I was on one project at Novartis, that was a giant process of challenges. Even as late as when the COVID trial took place, and Johnson & Johnson, with the head of R&D, was asked, why did you have a fatality in Brazil? Because of Johnson, and so I don't know, I don't have the data. That is one example of the benefit of real time. The other benefit is that what we want to also try to do is learn to judiciously allocate resources. Namely, if you're doing a trial well and you're spending money faster than your budget, you should be able to integrate that two things together to say, hey, there's something happening here, though it's blinded. But in order to get that integration, you need a blockchain-based algorithm, which is the smart contract, which we have built. It's a proprietary part of our process. And these smart contracts is just what I would say, the tip of the iceberg. There'll be far more automation that would take place of some of the repetitive process. This is just one example. And the reason why we bring that up is, as you know only too well, the number of vendors that are there in any clinical trial is huge. The number of clinical trial agreements are huge. And at least in the US, the payment process is so slow, it takes 3 to 4 months, that the stats show 41% of sites drop out also to the process. So there's a really acute pain point. In addition, I've known how the situation is on the other side. You have no clue, sitting even in the biggest companies, of how much money is going, how much money is being spent. And the US has actually changed its accounting code that's made it even more onerous. So if you're a CRO or a small company running it, if you can then bill your sponsor or whoever owns it on a daily basis, imagine the impact it does to your cash flows. compared to your 6 weekly basis, and then they pay you after 90 days and you get. So that's one part, the smart contracts or the algorithms that automate. Now, in order to do that, you need to know that you're not standing on a foundation of sand, but a foundation which is very concrete. And that goes back to the point that PK was talking about data integrity and data governance issues. Today, how do we ensure governance? It's because we send one person out, they open up all the registers and the books and they check that, unless they can't do it because it's a COVID situation. Tomorrow, let's say we do a trial with 10,000 people. And I'm saying this, let's say multiple trials, so 10,000 people. In the old system, there may have been, let's say 100 sites doing, let's say 1,000 people, or sorry, about 100 people at each site and covering it. Now in the new world where there's a hybrid trial, it could be that only 20% of the sites are doing. So the 8,000 guys that have to be conducted the trial. How do you ensure governance that everything is working right in that process in an intuitively, easily appealing way? That's our iPad cloud-based solution that makes it happen. Now you mentioned things like Medable, etc. I have the highest regard for them. But what Medable and all these guys do with their smartphone-based solution is, so on a small screen, they expect you to put in clinical study data. At a webinar which they ran, I asked, have you analyzed the number of queries you get using your system and the design? And there was silence because they've not. But as you know only too well with your experience, the number of queries that get generated later and the time it takes to clean that up is a long process. And that goes back to what PK had talked about. So there are many of these other things that come together. And when you start looking at some of the disasters that have taken place even in big companies, and I look at my ex-company as an example of it, I know that the situation is a little more challenging than what we could imagine. And that has been borne by a lot of market surveys. And the recent one was a study I was sharing from IQVIA with PK, and I'll send all those to you to give you an idea. What has now changed is that because of COVID, the issue has changed dramatically, and there's a greater degree of tolerance from a risk-averse organization generally to look at new digital technologies. And so we believe we are at the right product at the right time. It doesn't make it simpler or easier. And that's the reason why I went back to the clinical study that Dr. Kiran Chinnababu had done, Kiran Gada, and said that what are the pain points? Are these the pain points that I've mentioned here? Do they resonate in today's world on doing the cervical cancer study? If it does, then we may have a solution. If the pain points are something else, then maybe we have to structure a new solution. And that goes back to the first point I made on what do we need to do to win. Does that answer your point? There are other things also, technically speaking, like ransomware, etc., distributed ledger technology. I don't want to go into that for now.
Yeah, so thank you. Thanks for that elaborate, the elaboration that you both tried to make on this. My question is, I'm more practically looking at this from the same thing that you probably might be looking at. Okay, how is the grant evaluator going to go ahead and say, is there a relevancy here? Because first and foremost thing, they're looking at the blockchain as a core engine, right? That's what they're looking at, because that's the basis for the whole grant. And then the problem that we are solving. Now, as you could see in this, a lot of that in that UNICEF is all around financial aspects, environmental aspects, et cetera. But then there was a simple note down there. We are also okay to consider other problem statements. So the problem statement that I still I'm a little bit iffy is, okay, here is cervical cancer screening that we can go ahead and do. My understanding is they're not going to go ahead and give you the money to do a cervical screening. Exactly. They're going to go ahead and give you the money for validating this, or whether this blockchain technology is a solution for this particular thing or not, or a particular solution for this. So if you go ahead and run a cervical cancer screening trial, probably that may take millions of dollars, but the actual validation that they are going to award us for is only like $100,000. So
exactly,
that's one of the reasons why I was kind of like confused when I saw that yes, there is a cervical screening program that you all are trying to tackle
Yeah.
attack. So I'll be very honest and open. I don't have any skin in the game at this point in time in this project in any shape or form, or I don't have any dog bone in the race. So I just was curious to bring that
Sure.
thought process, because personally I don't understand that to an extent where how it can be translated. I've been evaluating several opportunities in several companies in the space of blockchain myself, from both from investment standpoint of view of our Honor Health innovation, but also from the use case applications in the healthcare setting as such, which we're still trying to figure this out.
So I'll take that up as a separate discussion.
Yeah,
We'll
no,
have
I
a separate one.
appreciate
But for
Yeah.
come back to your first point, I think that is still very critical. And that is, what is our problem statement? The way
Right.
we have defined it here, and Dr. Chinnababu, this is not a critique. I think this is spot on. The way the problem statement is defined over here is that we will do a cervical cancer study, screening, whatever, in order to tackle the issue, which is a major issue. Yeah. And I got the sense when I looked at a few of them, I also looked at some of the vaccination programs of UNICEF. I said, that may be interesting to them, but going back to what you said, Kiran Garu, it may not be sufficient for us to win. So getting the problem statement right and getting the pain point right is fundamental for this whole process. So I was actually going to suggest that we have to reconvene once we have a better picture of what are the proposals that have won. I have already made a list and I want Praveen's help also doing it. So that's one approach, to do that. The other approach is to still continue down this path. And that's why I'll turn it over to Dr. Chinnababu, but then look at a very specific area in that, not like a full study, but look at one area that is a pain point today, and then say that, okay, if there is a behavioral change that we need to do, or if there is an executional change or an operational change that we need to do, this is where we can potentially fit. That was my approach.
I was going to say, at the end of the day, we could take a statement, or we can view it. I'm going back to what Chinnababu's original thought was, is that the quality of data based on which UNICEF or anybody makes a decision today may have several flaws in it. And leveraging a technology which gives you better quality of data in itself is better for more effective decision-making in management of cancer, say, for example.
PK, totally agree with you. If that is the experience, and that's why I said if Praveen can take a look at it, if somewhere on the UNICEF sites, like where they have, we obviously look at blockchain, but keep it to a side for a moment. But look and say, okay, UNICEF has had issues of data management. I know that UNICEF has had issues of payment management. So we do have a solution for it, a blockchain-based solution that has come out very clearly. They do have issues of budgeting, for example, and tracking. So we do have that option. But if there's any way we can figure out that data integrity is an issue, and this is where Dr. Chinnababu, with your experience, might be also valuable, that if you know that data integrity is an issue and data sensitivity is an issue, then we can then proceed with this structure. That's how I was looking at it. I might be wrong, so please feel free to correct me.
I don't know. I think generally speaking, data integrity type questions, usually don't find them in public places because, people don't
True.
put them out easily.
True.
Newspapers will have to investigate what Novartis did and how the monkey study didn't come out right, but nobody knows about that stuff. FDA may, but so,
that's fair.
But the general belief, there are publications which certainly talk about the error rates and, manual transcription of data, all of those they introduce, they change the quality of data at the end. So, I think that generally speaking, people will buy that. But
so PK, you think people will buy that if we focus on data integrity as the pain point that we are solving through this whole process? Because they do have a lot of manual kind of processes there, for sure.
Well, that's just one of the things to do. I think it'll also depend on ultimately what the problem statement tries to solve in terms of, the clinical or medical problem, how they value that within the context of the type of data you're generating. Because, say, for example, there's no way for me to say it's right or wrong, but whatever numbers are out there on the UNICEF website about proportion of patients who actually get vaccinated and how many people get only one vaccination, how many get two vaccinations, what are the causes, why people only get one, never get the second one. There is a lot of ambiguity in this space for people to make effective decisions. So anytime you can improve the quality of this data capture, it has to be meaningful to somebody who has to make a decision ultimately whether they're following the HPV paradigm for vaccination or not.
I think that makes a huge amount of sense. So if I were to then turn it around and maybe, Dr. Chinnavan and Dr. Kiran, maybe you can comment on it, is that if we had to redesign the hypothesis instead of basically looking at hypothesis on solving a cervical cancer issue, is there something else that we can look at to go back to Dr. Narang's point, which is relating to the data integrity issue over here, without obviously pointing out. And maybe it is just a simple thing of saying that, listen, 80% of data that is collated in UNICEF, I don't know what the figure is, or 50% is on manual basis. And I've seen some case studies where clearly, we could help out with our system. And I'll come to that in a minute. But let's say there's an X percentage and the percentage is significant enough, we can genuinely say, based on published data elsewhere, that there could be a huge amount of efficiency gain by using a blockchain-based system. For example, that is one approach with it. What do you think, Dr. Chinnababu?
I think I echo with what Narang also has mentioned and what you're talking. In terms of breaking this down into a much more smaller task rather than keep it too wide. So as far as we are not solving the entire cervical cancer problem
Exactly.
here. So that I think is not the context or the way we can apply. So one thing is, yes, the simplest thing is a robust data with respect to, because UNICEF is a public health concerned thing. We can look at from a public health perspective itself in terms of what is the incidence of people taking vaccine, what makes them not to take vaccine, how many are vaccinated, and also for this problem, is this technology right suited? How is it different from regular electronic capture of data? So in that sense, can we really say that there is a great deal of difference? See, manual versus blockchain, we all understand, but from an existing electronic health records system point of view, can there be something really significantly different by using blockchain? I think that's what could be a differentiator. Yeah.
Sure. I think it's a good point. So one of the ways I would comment on that is that if you take a look at the general EHR kind of process, the first part is that these are in centralized databases, which are obviously going to be a challenge to be maintained and kept secure. The beauty of a distributed database is that if the database goes down because of hacking at some place, the rest of the organization does not suffer. So going back to your, the discussion we had a couple of days back, suppose the study was being done in 3 places. One was in Addis Ababa, one in Nairobi, and one in Nizamabad. And for whatever reason, we took down Nizamabad. We want to be sure that the other 2 are still working and there's no issue. By the way, that was a paper that was very explicitly done by a Japanese company like ours, which was looking at the issue of data integrity in Japan and clinical trials. And they said AWS had collapsed and we were able to do it. So that's one part which a normal electronic database cannot do. The second part is that a normal electronic database tends to be done on a smartphone, and that has its own disadvantages. So far, when Medable or Science 37 have done that, they've encountered some resistance across, but it's still the smart thing to do. What we've done at least is by using a better UX design has allowed that, but that's still not very blockchain specific. You know, the third thing though, which I think is blockchain specific, goes back to the immutability of the data. By checking very clearly who is done and who's put it, we put in a much higher level of governance so that 30 years from now, if you're looking at your cervical cancer data, you can be quite sure that it's pure and untouched as it is 3 days after the data goes in. That may not be the case with a classic centralized electronic health record data, you know, because that's the beauty of the blockchain, you know, because once the data comes in a block, other data comes in a block, other data comes in a block. So you cannot change what has been written in a block, you know, 30 days back. So that's the three things that I would emphasize, which makes it hugely different. Now, there are some downsides also to it, which I won't get into, but that's why I said, if we design the hypothesis and show that we can prove this, along with the financial solution where we are paying people very rapidly, we would be in a good position to articulate and potentially demonstrate that this is path breaking for them.
Small chips. Let us make it much more simpler, as I mentioned before,
Exactly.
instead of because the funding is screening, perhaps smear and other things. It's only if that is the case, I think we should look at collecting the data and showing the case for use of blockchain. I think that should be our simplest tool, rather than, because
Right.
again we need to look at funding for this project. That will become an issue for us. So given that, I think we can look at a behavioral pattern, acceptance of vaccination, or the screening practices. So we can look at much more simplified, wherein we can do a questionnaire based collection of data and then showing some kind of outcome of this technology, and then take forward as a phase 2. So that I think that would be much more simpler. Thank you.
No, I think that any other thoughts from anybody before I also put in my 2 cents? Because I know we are running short on time after this.
Well, I think maybe we should, if you have already sent this document to everybody, so everybody can take a look at it, take a crack at it, and then maybe we can reconvene and try to see if there is a way to frame the problem statement so people are aligned.
So what I can do is I can send that. Praveen has already got it. I think what we need to just define the task though is that I agree with you, Dr. Chinnababu, your idea is a good one, which is to kind of parse it down to a smaller subset. And Praveen, if you could also just, if possible, just do a quick search on the UNICEF Innovation Blockchain site. What are the grants that they've awarded so far? And we can just kind of do a listing. Then those two we can help also build up our definition of the problem statement. I do have some biases because I've already seen it today, but I want to sort of keep my biases away, and that's why I've not shared that on this paper here. And then maybe we can again reconvene if that makes sense, or day after tomorrow. Does that make sense, Praveen? I know I'm dumping a big task on you, but it really is pretty simple and straightforward. I've gone into the UNICEF sites, and if your other colleague had been there, it would have been a little easier. But if you go to the UNICEF Innovation Fund site, it's pretty easy to pull out all the things that are there. Yeah.
So we have Harsh in the call from ISB.
Okay.
And he will be taking up this task, sir. And
perfect. Assign it to him. Harsha, did you get what we've got to do?
Yes, Harsha, you can. Yes, so sir. Please ask any questions, Harsha, because you will be doing this. So yes, this is the website.
Okay.
So there are, So there are, this is the one website. Then there are a couple of other websites associated with it. If you just do a Google search, you'll find it. And all we want to do is to go back to a few grants that have won Like, for example, there's one grant that one which is building a complete open source protocol, which can be helping UNICEF. We will not go down that sort of technical pathway at all, for example. But what we want to do is to see how we bring a proper overlap between healthcare and blockchain, right?
Okay, sir.
And that's they do have some proposals that have one which are from a financial perspective. The beauty of our solution is we're bringing in finance along with healthcare, which nobody else does. And that gives a distinctive advantage. And that is only possible through the blockchain's smart contract algorithms.
So Rama, so one of the ways to highlight the blockchain for this project would be to build up on the financial side automatically.
That's what I thought also. But I didn't want to kind of drop it in here. I just want to see some of those. The reason is that they have other things also. So they have brought finance very specifically, and we can bring that in, because it's a pretty straightforward, but then we will not be distinctive compared to other blockchain DeFi approaches that people have.
No, but we are building it along with the clinical side, right?
I know. I totally agree with you. I'm just saying that if somebody already has a decentralized finance solution, they may sit back and say, well, let me just club an electronic data capture with it and I have a solution. That's the logic that I was wondering. I agree with you. I certainly think, and I'll make that point, that we need to emphasize the finance piece.
I thought the finance piece is obviously finance piece, but more specifically, the value proposition behind smart contracts that are delivered through blockchain is what the finance piece. It's not just any finance piece, right? I mean, that's what we'll have to.
No, you're right. You're right. But they've had some guys already who have won grants who have done something not like ours, but done a payment system. Whereas in our case, why we stand out compared to the others is we do the checks, then with the smart contract, then we do the payment, then we do the reconciliation so that an accounting file goes. And then we bring it back to a financial plan versus actual, a budget versus actual, which nobody else does. So your point is very valid.
So those are value propositions why this technology can be leveraged. And the problem statement can be around the, how Dr. Chinnabhabu has already written it.
And that's why I want Harsha to just take a look at it. And if I forgot, Harsha, that you're there and you're one of the, I think definitely part of the smart constellation. So maybe you could also give your thoughts on how to draft the problem statement and put it there. And we'll also take a look at it ourselves.
Sure, sir.
And yeah. Dr. Chinnabhabu, does that make sense? Would you be comfortable with that approach?
I think that's because look at
can't hear you.
What is the pattern?
You're breaking up.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm traveling. Am I audible?
I know.
Now? Still problem?
Yeah, it's definitely better now.
Okay.
Yeah, much better, sir.
Okay. Sure. Basically, no, I think you are right. Let us look at the pattern of award grant making process and what are the previous ones. We'll make much more simpler application and kind of move forward. I'm in sync with this process.
Perfect. So then let's do that. So Harsha, if you could be kind enough to take a look, there's lots of good stuff there, and then put it into 4 or 5 buckets. So once we know that the finance piece is there, we need to know what have they focused on. And once we know that they're focused on payment mechanism, that's what I saw. We know that we've got a intuitively appealing solution because we got an end-to-end solution, not just payments, but using finance as a strategic decision tool. That's what we're giving, that competency to a general project lead. Then if you look at the others, if you can bucket them also, then we can sort of look at it and say, does it make sense or not? And then we can tweak the proposal that Dr. Chinnabhabu made to look at a hypothesis structure which is very tailored and solving some pain point. And if that pain point then matches with us, then we know that we've got a proposal there. Clear, Harsha?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Thank you. Thank you, Harsha. And
Dr. Kiran Garu, have I missed something in that approach that you'd like to correct?
No. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, very clear.
Looks like I've been trying to fix my audio issues for the last few minutes. So there were some issues down here. So yeah, summarizing the problem statement, keeping it very simple, looking back at what was being awarded. And I like what Dr. Narang said, that if you can attach that finance piece, I saw a lot of those awards that have been awarded was mostly on the financial side. So if you're bringing that clinical and the financial together, and if there is some sort of a, let's say there is a reimbursement for these patients who are coming in for screening, or if there is an incentive for them to participate on a study, right? So for a screening study. So those types of financial tie-ups would be much more efficient, where you can say, hey, look, we'll take $100,000 from UNICEF, use the money, use blockchain technology, use it towards solving the cervical screening problem, and we will screen, like, use this towards screening, I don't know, maybe 100,000, maybe 500 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people, and we'll be using this to efficiently both collect data and distribute the cash in the most easiest way.
And account for it, because everybody distributes cash.
And account for it. Exactly. And that way you account for it. So at the end of the day, once the project is done, we'll give UNICEF how we use blockchain to show that there is no misuse of funds, how we are able to go ahead and collect smartly this data, and all the decentralized version in how you just described in from an, you both were more elegant in that, in saying that I'm mostly looking at that from an operating standpoint of how you can take it and execute it. And probably if I'm a funder, I'll be looking at this and say, okay, what is my outcome at the end of the day? Okay, they're used a blockchain technology and they're able to solve something in the form of distribution, which is known in the financial world, but they're able to do that in the space of clinical trial or a clinical screening setting. How about that?
Yeah, clear. So
I mean, that's just a suggestion for Harsha, if he's the one who's going to put together the problems.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Harsha can put the first draft, then we can then all tweak it together. So Harsha, will leave it on your strong shoulders, as Captain Marvel says. Strong things come to strong people. So we're confident that you'll be able to put it together, and then we can then tweak it.
Okay, sir, definitely. By the grace of God.
Totally. Yeah. Praveen, have we missed anything else that we got to cover?
Sure, sir. So thank you, sir. I think so. Harsha would be looking at
building problem statement, as well as looking at the database of grants, UNICEF grants that were awarded.
Yes, sir. Proposals and building.
Yeah.
So Praveen, what is the drop dead date to submit this?
Sir, by end of the month, sir.
End of the month. Okay. So that gives us 2 more days, right?
Yes, sir. So Harsha would be doing this by end of today, Harsha?
Yes, sir. Most probably.
Okay. Then
I got to be honest with you, Praveen. I might have to drop off because
please.
Coming up. We are putting together one of the largest grants in the state of Arizona. We are putting together.
Please, sir. Dr. Kiran Garu.
Yeah, Dr. Kiran Garu, just remember us. Maybe you can give us also some money. We'll give it back to you in very good ROI.
No, can you hear me?
Seriously, I'd like to get some time with you to have a longer chat, but let me know when it would be convenient.
Yeah, can you hear me better now? Or
yeah.
Okay. So I got to drop off, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. I have this grant that is coming up, so I need to take care of that, which is a pretty extensive grant.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. So, sir, see the action items. This Nalli Anna has to get back. I'm reminding him. So Harsha would be doing it by 25th, and then we are resubmitting the proposal by when, sir? So today is 25th. Do you
I'd
want
say
it by?
Sunday morning your time, Saturday night our time. Yeah,
Okay, by
PK, would that work? I would say once Harsha gives it tomorrow evening, I can give some response to it already. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I'm sure I can take a quick look at it, but I think most of the comments I made, they're probably already on. I think there's some of those things we touched on today, so, but we can take
Yeah.
another look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Harsha, you can
And
take the
Praveen,
help of. Yes, sir.
and Praveen, if you can share what we have built with Harsha also, that'll be great. I
It's
sent you the
there. I
document that had.
placed it in
Perfect.
the Google Drive, sir, and Harsha has will give access to Harsha also, sir. And
Yeah.
then next meeting, we are meeting when, sir? So by 26th, that is Saturday, Harsha will do. When do we plan to meet again, sir?
There's no choice but to meet on Sunday morning, your time, Saturday
Okay.
night, our time.
Okay, on Sunday, 7 a.m. Okay, yeah. Sure, sir. We'll do like this. Harsha agreed, no?
And before we go, there's one more action item. Praveen, please start looking at the grant writer, unless Harsha will be writing up the grant. You know, I don't know who's going to write up the grant. We have to have somebody who is a good grant writer. And you mentioned to me that there are some good people that we know.
Sir, but so we are willing to see because these people, they may expect either percentage of the grant, or we may have to think of some money upfront, sir. Freelancers.
Percentage of grant. We're not giving any money upfront. I've tried
Yes.
that upfront process. It doesn't work very well.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Sure.
That Dr. Chinnababu, is that okay? I mean, so I
Yes,
just said
yes,
that
sir.
based on my experience.
No, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, sir. Thank you. Okay. Bye,
Okay.
sir. Then, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
So much. Thank you for
Thanks.
your time.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Harsha, you're clear about your task?
Yes, brother, it is clear. Now I
So
have to go through
anything
the
you have,
website.
you ask in the group. You are welcome to ask sirs. They're all there in the group. And by evening, try to give them the update. And in the meantime, also, you're welcome. Okay.
Okay, brother. So I need to go through all the websites and I have to study about the grants.
Grants that have been successful so far.
Okay.
And then come with a statement for this. But please keep updating. See, right now, Vishal, I'll give you all the material. Okay.
Okay, brother.
So see here. See and all. See. Here is the access. Okay.
Okay.
And so this is the proposal that he wrote just now.
Okay.
So I'm putting off this old one.
Okay.
Okay. This is the latest one, Harsha.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got it, Harsha?
1 second, brother. Let me see.
Hello, Harsha, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I can't hear you. Hello, Harsha.
Yes, brother, I
Are
can
you
hear you.
speaking?
Yeah, I'm speaking. I mean, can
I
you hear
can't
me
hear
now?
you. Is it my side problem? Wait. Hello.
I can hear you, brother. I can hear you.
Hello, Harsha. Brother. Hello. Hello.